Hello and welcome, I am Garion Reaver and this is a Library of Ruina character tier list. I recently completed my live streamed playthrough of Library of Ruina, which you can check out, that's linked in the description. It took me over 200 hours and almost 2 years, but I did it. And in conclusion, I can say that Library of Ruina is one of my favourite games ever. It has spectacular writing, beautiful art, and really cool characters. So to summarise my thoughts on the characters, I thought I would do a tier list, ranking basically every character who talks throughout the entirety of the game. So this doesn't have characters that don't talk like from general receptions, but has basically every proper guest and a few characters who only appeared in cutscenes. Remember, these are my personal opinions, so please don't tell me I'm wrong. This will obviously contain spoilers for the entirety of the game. I recommend you go check out my livestream playthrough before you watch this, as that way you get to experience the game as it's intended. Or, you know, through me, but as it's intended rather than in a tier list as your first exposure to it. So assuming everyone left is okay with spoilers, here is the cast of characters that I will be ranking. I have put them in order of appearance, apart from most of the top line, and I find it fascinating that Greta and Musicians of Bremen are the only two of the Distortion, the ensemble, who actually appear at the ensemble part. Everybody else appeared earlier, which is just pretty cool. By the way, this tier list will be linked in the description, and I'm doing it pretty much exactly as it was. They had these names, except I added the recycling tier. I'll come back to the tiers in a moment. And I added Tomeri and Angelica, because they were missing, and I feel that they need to be in this list. So the tiers. These are pretty simple. There are my absolute favourites, the ones I love, the ones I really like, the ones I like, the ones I'm neutral on, the ones I dislike, and the ones I hate. I don't really know where to begin. I guess I'll start with the rats. I am sort of neutral on the rats. I think they are important in just setting a very simple baseline for the game and the combat, etc. And, you know, rats as a whole aren't particularly... yeah, they're inconsequential in virtually every way. But I think I'm actually going to put them into the like, because they managed to show right from the outset that even the most inconsequential characters in both lore and gameplay can still be people with motivations and wants and needs and all of this, and it's a spectacular start to the game fighting these, and they have cool designs as well. I'm not going to be sticking to strictly like encounter order. I will jump straight to the robots, the Brotherhood of Iron, I believe. I'm going to put them in squarely neutral, because I like their designs. They're the first real sort of interaction of, hey, by the way, there are like horrendously extensive prosthetics that you can get while still technically being human, but I don't remember a single inch about their personalities. I know that they were like complaining about food because they can't eat or don't need to eat or something, but anyway. Finn from Yun's office, I'm going to put him at a remnant level, because like I do vaguely remember him, but he made very little impact. Yun, however, was a lot more interesting, so I'm going to put him in the like. He was the first one to really, I don't know, I think he was the first one to like face Angela properly and have a conversation with her. Like the art from that here is really pretty. And then Eri, frankly, I always forget she exists. I think I'm going to get some of the less interesting ones out of the way first, like the sweepers. The sweepers, I don't know, I don't know. I'm torn between putting them here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 in paperback and 1 in hardcover, because they're sort of straddling the line, but mostly in paperback, because they showed that there is a lot more personality to these just seemingly faceless, mindless monsters that first appeared in Lobco, but there's still, like, I feel we don't learn enough. Like, they talk about family and stuff, but we don't really know anything more than that. I was kind of hoping we would learn more, but whether there was just nothing more to learn or we just don't get shown it anyway. Carnival, these were the people who ate flesh for silk or for cloth. They are interesting there's only one of these, despite there being 3 named ones in the game, presumably because they all have the same appearance compared to like these, which are sort of visually distinct. So I'm going to put them there because I find the whole like bodies opening up into spidery limbs that tear apart flesh to sew fabric is it's just a fascinatingly bizarre concept. The 3 smiling faces, the first introduction of Smoke, I cannot for the life of me remember what their personalities are like, but I find their faces really creepy. So I'm gonna have them straddle the line again, but mostly in recycling, because yeah, I find them very creepy. I don't really like their chibi sprites either. Yeah, not particularly keen on them. Hook Office, again, I don't really remember them. They've got kind of cool designs, like Taozin, I think this guy's called. He's got like the big prosthetic. McCullin, I think. He just came across as a big dumb guy, basically. Naoki, yeah, sort of neutral on her as well. I like the rebreather. It's always been an aesthetic I enjoy, but no, I'm going to drop him down to paperback. I'm fairly neutral on them. Like, their designs elevate them, whereas his drops him, but otherwise, I don't know anything about them. San, or Sans as I kept calling him, deliberately wrong, by the way. He was one of the first, I think he might have actually been the first one to escape the library, which makes him more interesting just by that alone. Apart from that, fairly standard guy. He was involved with both Streetlight Office with Mars and Lulu, and he also went over to Zwei Association and was involved with these 3. Mars, I'm neutral on. Honestly, he's very forgettable except by association, because Lulu, I rather like. Lulu was the first instance of a character caring about another, and the fact that it took that long, it sort of shows what Project Moon World is about, but also it makes it much more impactful when she just broke down over her friend's death. And then, like, she comes back with Lulu's friends, and that's all they're called. And considering this world has sort of always been about nobody has friends, nobody cares about anybody, and then it's like, that's not true. And she's very memorable for that. And these 3, they are Julia, Isadora, and a guy whose name I don't remember, Walter. Walter was the first, like, really good one. Like, Yun wasn't bad as a key page. Walter, I don't remember a thing about him. Just plain office guy, I guess. Julia, her design's a bit strange, but like, she was trying to be positive. Isadora is more positive in my memory because she like had a bit more of an attitude to her, which makes her more memorable to me. Full Stop Office are these 2 and her. They're the ones who were sent to assassinate Eileen. So they're the first real instance of guns in the game. And apart from the only 2 memorable things are they're the first instance of guns, and they understood, hey, we should probably run for our lives, which makes them seem more like people. So I guess neutral. Yeah, I guess neutral for all 3. I think they were like Liwei, Tamaki, and I don't remember his name. Stefan. He is Stefan. The Robot 3 Gaze Office are fascinating designs, and they're like Alok, Dalok, and Bono, which is a weird name. And I assume these 2 are related or something for the fact that their names are so similar, but it's never really addressed. It might just be a lazy naming thing, who knows. His design didn't really work for me, but he's otherwise neutral because I think Gaze Office is quite fascinating. They have some interesting goals which set them apart, and their visuals are, again, really cool. Bono with his like 4 arms, whereas Dalok is like a tiny person with a load of monitors and lenses for a head, wearing a hoodie, and it's adorable. So she gets elevated to hardcover. Mola Office with Olga, I think Rain and Mika, I think that's the way round they are. Rain and Mika are largely forgettable, except he told Olga off for like her drinking, whereas Olga is much more memorable, both in her personality was a lot more sort of pronounced compared to the other 2. She had connections with Mio, which again is interesting. So Olga I'm going to put up in limited, whereas, where have they gone? I've lost them, there they I'm going to put them down here because they are largely... they are overshadowed by her and by the warp train stuff in general, but Olga managed to shine through that and they just didn't. Salvador, Yuna... maybe I'll come back to Philip. Salvador was an interesting one. There's the whole beware of an old man in a profession like this, because I've forgotten how the phrase goes. You know the phrase I mean. He's cool. He is really cool. He has a good attitude, I think. It was interesting seeing him interact with Roland, and I'm going to have to go back and check like the interactions Roland had with people now that his actions have been put into context. Yuna was also pretty cool. The way that she was just sent on her own, and she was very much like a solo fixer, sent on her own to just fix problems. I'm going to get them out of the way. Gyeongmi, Dino, and Zulu from the Stray Dogs, virtually no personality. They were just big brutish guys from my recollection. Yeah, not a thing there at all. The Kurokumo clan, visually really, really cool. I don't like the way they acted. There was that whole brutal honor thing going on, but yeah, I'm mixed on them in general. Xiao I sort of rank higher because I think her design is absolutely stellar and is really, really cool that Ishmael got an ID for her, which I didn't know at the time I gave Ishmael her appearance, because I had Ishmael as a librarian. And it may be my favourite identity art in Limbus, but anyway, I'm going to put her at limited just because she's really, really cool. The other two I'm going to put in, neutral, because I like how they play, I like how they look, but otherwise neutral. I suppose I better address the animals in the room. Meow, Oink, and Moo Moo. They are weird. Like, I find them viscerally disturbing with their motivations, and it's sort of a thing that the Musicians of Bremen didn't really follow on with, because the Musicians is practically completely insane by the time you meet them, and they're definitely insane by the time they're finally dead. But these three, yeah, they have a lot of personality, both visually and in just the way they talk with each other. So Oink is the least interesting of the three. He's very much just a big brutish guy who just sort of does stuff. Moo Moo I find funny, because it is like the horror of what they're doing juxtaposed with these like, what sound does a rabbit make? What sound does a rabbit make? Moo Moo, I guess. And so that makes him funny. Meow is strange. Meow has one of the most eclectic designs of any character in anything I've seen, and this includes stuff like Near Automata, where it's just a bizarre mashup, but like she's got like a cat mask, a long ponytail, a corset skirt, and like one long stocking and like angel wings, and it's such a bizarre combination, and I sort of really like it. Combined with the fact that she is very like positive and bad positive, but positive and enthusiastic, it really makes her stand out in a lot of ways. Wedge Office with Oscar, Pamela, and Pamela. I can never remember which way round they are. He's cool in design, if nothing else. He's very Bloodborne-esque. I always consider him the Bloodborne guy. And for that, he's cool. And like taking in Philip when Philip was awful, that sort of elevates him. But like, I don't remember much more about his personality. Yeah, like he's another one who showed that there is stuff beyond selfishness, because he saved Philip. I wish he hadn't, but we'll come on to Philip pretty soon, I think, as I'm dropping a lot of hints about my thoughts on him. Pamela and Pamela, I think they're disadvantaged in that I believe this one like lost her body, so she had the same body, and that made them both visually very, very similar. And because of that, their personalities got a bit lost in it as well, and overshadowed by the giant, colossal you-know-what that Philip is. So I'm going to put them as sort of, they're down here for being forgettable. But let's talk about Philip. Introduced as a bit of a whiny guy, he went downhill so quickly from that already low point. I don't even know how to put into words my how much I dislike Philip as a character. The fact that, like, when he distorted, it was because he was jealous over the girl he liked, Yuna. He suspected her of having a relationship with the presumably married with children Salvador, and that was his explanation for why she wasn't interested in him. And it's like, well, obviously she the only reason she wouldn't date me is because she's already sleeping with our boss. And it's like, I mean, that seems disrespectful to everybody you know. And then when he does distort, he becomes this incredibly foul-mouthed baby, and it's like, that's quite on the nose about what kind of an arsehole he really is. And it's one of the worst fights in the game because it just goes on forever, and then he just keeps coming back all the way through to the end where he's in the Reverberation ensemble, and he is just a whiny git whose design gets progressively cooler and is completely not earned. So he goes right at the bottom of the recycling, and I almost added another flaw just for him. I don't know if he's my most hated character. He very much could be, but I just don't like him at all. The Thumb. They are an organisation that I really don't like. To be honest, I find the whole naming scheme of, like, the 5 fingers to be really quite, like, who is in the pinky? Who is in the pinky is as like a threatening organisation of murderers, you know. But anyway, yeah, the Thumb. I don't like their attitude. It's a bit too, like, you will respect us or we're going to break everything about you. And it's just like, that's too brutish for, like, the mob, the mafia vibe they're going for. Also, Dennis looks really weird with the big hair, so I gave him a silly voice. So I'm not particularly keen on him. Boris seems like he's trying a bit too hard to be cool, and he almost manages it. Catriel is trying a bit too hard to have her boobs on show. And Kalo, sorry, he's a bit cooler, but still not by much, so he's barely scraping into paperback. By comparison, the Shi Association don't really try to be cool, they just sort of do it for the most part. Like Eugen, Valentin, and Tenma, they have cool designs, and they are clearly pushed far beyond their limits. And it's such a shame we don't get to see them at more of a peak. We see them sort of in the sort of the trough that they've fallen into after days of hard work with no rest, but they are cool. Tenma has that sort of mouth-covered design, which is a design sort of choice that I'm fond of. Valentin is alright, but largely forgettable. Eugen is pretty cool. Oh, I forgot to talk about Tanya when I talked about the Kurokumo. Tanya is a bit of a blunt character. Like, she's probably one of the more one-dimensional characters in the ensemble, just because she's like, power, as a just full stop underlined 3 times. That's her only thing. And it's always kind of boring when a character's just like about power, because power is a nebulous concept, and power comes in many forms, and she just means like fighting power, which is the most boring kind. So I'm going to put it... No, not down there. Down there. Because, like, she has an interesting design and a bit of mystique around her, especially at first, but is ultimately a boring character. Emma and Noah with Oswald, with the 8 o'clock circus and stuff. You don't really learn a great deal about Emma and Noah. They become infinitely more interesting when they combine into a multi-tiered clown monster, and their design as Emma and Noah the clown is, or jester, or whatever you'd call them, is really cool. And it's a fascinating thing, and probably talks about their personalities in a way that I'm less interested in. I'm going to put them, like, I almost gave them their own one, similar to how Tomeri has one separate from Tommy and Mary. I almost gave them a separate thing for the combined one, but I don't think their personalities change. I think they lost their personality quite a bit for that. Yeah, I'm going to put them down here. They're not particularly interesting. Their combined one is more interesting, so maybe I should have one of those. Oswald, however, he's weird and interesting. He's interesting because he's different and has sort of motivations which don't really make sense when he explains them, but otherwise are sort of interesting. So I guess I'm going to put him... I'm going to put him in the light. No, he doesn't really deserve to be in the light. Like, I put him up there and it's just like, is he as good as these? No, not really. I'm just going to put him in neutral. I suppose I should talk about Tomeri though. God, this is one of the ones I'm dreading the most. This Love Town as a plotline is the most hard-hitting thing. One of the most hard-hitting. They'll continue to hit me very, very hard even after Love Town. But it's one of the most hard-hitting things in the entire game. And to the point that From a Place of Love is one of my favourite songs. It's a song I listen to and think about a great deal. I've analysed it quite a bit to myself and on some of my streams. I'm sort of tempted to do a full just analysis video breaking down that song because of how much I think about it. But, there's so many thoughts and emotions mixed up in this. Tommy and Mary, let's start with. They are not particularly interesting as characters, but they're not really intended to be. And like I saw a meme or something that was like, Elena hears these two teenagers talk about their relationship for 5 minutes on a train and decides to put them through the worst hell imaginable or something like that. And yeah, they are just sort of cliche teenagers on what I think to be one of their earliest dates. And to give a quick little insight into From a Place of Love and my analysis of it, I don't think Tommy is as into the relationship as Mary is. She seems to sort of be in love with him already, and he, based on the lines of the song, isn't that into her. But maybe that's just the song, that might not be canon, but I don't know. It's just so much in that song lines up that I'm inclined to think that bit does too. Not really important, but Tommy himself, not a likeable guy. He faints for like 3 weeks straight. Mary at least has enough fortitude to not faint for 3 weeks straight when being put through hell, so she's got that going for her. Tomeri is tragic. I mean, it has to go up here just for sheer impact. I hate the concept of it. It's visually abhorrent, but it has such an impact that I cannot in good conscience put it lower than that. Then we have Elena and Jae-hyung, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing the name. They're really hard to talk about. Like, I'll get the puppeteer out of the way first. He's a madman. He's a very capable madman, which is always a fun combination. But he's never really grabbed me. Like, oh, you stopped me from resurrecting my son, and therefore I'm going to murder 1,000 people to get back at you. And it's just, he never really made sense to me in that he's clearly insane and that's the sense that's being made, you know. I'm going to elevate him just to neutral just because I like his gimmick. I don't understand the head, how that ties into things, but the gimmick-wise I think is pretty good. Elena, Blood Red Knight, the nurse. Oh, she is one of the characters in this game that I'm the most torn about, if not the most torn in the entire game, because I love her look, both as Elena the nurse and as Blood Red Knight, at least before the suit. You know, the suit sort of just downplays it a bit for me, but I think she's really, really cool. Like, the Blood Fiend thing is fascinating, and her perspective on it and, like, her goals to do with it, they're really cool. She almost turns evil because everyone expects her to. That's almost the way it comes across, and I don't think that's the truth or the full extent of it, but that's definitely a part of it. So you tally all that up, and then you combine that with what she did. And what she did is one of the worst things to be done in the entire game, in my perspective, because she targeted specifically two of the most innocent, unassuming people on that entire train and decided, yeah, those are the two whose lives I'm ruining beyond anybody else's, because they retained a lot more consciousness than most of the people in Lovetown, seemingly. I mean, they still went completely mad from being alive for thousands of years, but they were more so, because she combined two young people dating, and it's so tragic to me. And the fact that she did that, the fact that she put them through that, and the fact that I have now found out when all of the books were returned in the good ending, they returned as Tomeri. And it's like, oh, if she had not done what she did, they would not have ended up like that. Oh, God. It's one of the most heart-wrenching things in the entire game, and she did it. And she did it with absolutely no regard. And the two bits in particular that make me hate her for it are the way she manipulated them and the way she got angry when she wasn't manipulating them well enough. Sorry if I'm dwelling on this a lot, but this is one of the most pivotal ones for me in this entire list. Yeah, there's a line in the song, or a couple of lines in From a Place of Love, where it's like, Tommy's saying, I don't know if I'm ready to merge, it turns out. And she's like, it's not family biz, get over it. And it's just like, get over it. Saying that to a teenager when you're about to ruin their entire existence, it's just, it's so awful. Despite all that, she is one of the most intriguing and probably my favourite characters in the entire thing. And I feel so guilty putting her up there for everything she did, despite everything she did. But I do think she deserves to be up there. Right, let's knock out a few quick ones. Kane Office with Nemo, Barda and Martina, I think. Nemo is cool for having the computer head and the positive outlook, even when he's doing horrible things. The other two, like Martina, I don't like the design. And Barda, pretty neutral on. Lol, whose design I constantly get confused with Miris. Lol is Xiao's husband, and sort of he drives a lot of the plot, mostly, or not a lot of the plot, he drives a lot of her stuff because of who he is, but otherwise, like, I don't know, I guess we don't see anywhere near as much of his perspective on things as we see Xiao's, which makes Xiao a lot more interesting, but that's not really Lol's fault, but neutral on him. He clearly did love Xiao, and that's good, but at the same time, we just don't see enough of him to really, like, connect, I guess. And, Cecil and Mia? May. Cecil and May. Cecil, rather forgettable. I don't remember if she ever spoke. May is only more memorable because of her adorable little face, so I'm going to put her in neutral for that. Xiao. Oh, well, Xiao, Miris, and Chun. Chun is completely forgettable. Again, he's just another person who's just sort of there to have another person in the dialogue. Miris annoyed the living crap out of me, because for a start, he was weirdly powerful despite having no distortion going on. So I'm going to put him down there as well. No, I'm going to put him in the bottom one. Screw him. I really didn't like him. He was very annoying to me and was a coward. So he was like, oh, I'll follow you to death. By the way, I'm not actually willing to die. It wasn't quite like that. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but that's how it felt. Xiao is a fascinating character, because she's another one that she's very much there to reflect Roland and Angelica's marriage and their relationship and what people are willing to do when the other is lost and all of that, and that plays very, very heavily into Roland's story, and for that she's interesting. Then she's got the whole, like, the dragon thing, and she's willing to give up her career for her dead husband, with the possibility of not necessarily even of saving him, just of recovering a memento of him. And is I guess it's the equivalent to recovering a body, but still, she is a fascinating character, and so I'm putting her up there. To wrap up the last few of the groups before we go on to the remaining individuals, the Warp cleanup crew with Rose, Sen, and Lesty. Sen, like, to be honest, all three of them have a great deal of personality, more so than many of the other groups of three, where some of them are just there for the dialogue, you know? Like, Sen is interesting in that he's over it. Like, all three of them represent three sort of very distinct parts of working in something like Warp, and it's a great perspective on it, because Rose is like the dutiful leader. She has a goal, she will do the goal, that's her job. And for that, she's interesting, but not as interesting. Like, I also don't know why she's got blue hair. That feels like she dyed it for the job. She might have been trying a bit too hard there. I don't know, it just seemed a bit odd that she had blue hair and a blue uniform. Sen, he was more interesting because he was tired of it. He was over it. For him, it was just a job, and you can tell that it has mentally and physically scarred him. He looks aged compared to the others. And then you have Lesty. Lesty is the new recruit, excitable and interested and really dynamic. And a lot of, they talk about in her appearance, like, oh, this might be hard for your first time. And then she's like, no, I'm fine with this. And it's revealed she's from, like, District 23, which is, like, the cannibalism one, I think. So it's like, yeah, she is perfectly fine with seeing dismembered flesh and body parts. This is clearly something that she is perfectly fine with. Basically, all of her art has Lesty being really, really casual. Like, even in this one, where, gore warning, even in this one, where like they're walking through this horror scene, she's got like a leg bent as if she's skipping, and it's just such a tiny detail that adds an immense amount of personality. So Lesty has been one that I've remembered the most. Despite having a really minor role, she is one of my favourite characters in this. The Index with Esther, Hubert and Gloria. I can never remember which way around Esther and Hubert is, but it's those two. And Gloria. I'll also do Jan and Moire at the same time. Visually, the Index proselytes and proxies are incredible. Some of my favourite designs in the game, with the look, with the like the prosthetic pseudo sort of steampunk mask that one of them has, and the fact that Gloria, who is this giant hulking robot whose almost complete robotic body is covered by a robe, and just has the highest, like, most friendly and casual voice out of all of them. It's just all-round spectacular. So I'm going to put the two of them in there, Esther up there, Gloria up there, Jan and Moire. Jan I am kind of torn on, because at first Jan seems really interesting. They seem like they seem mysterious and distant and powerful. You think they're going to get killed off at one point, but then they don't. And yeah, there's a lot going on. And then it's revealed that they've been secretly imposing their own will. And the prescripts thing is one of my least favourite things from the game, because I don't think it works. I know what it's going for. It's saying, like, the city is the problem. Like, society and the way... Like, it is a very on-the-nose thing of saying, like, it's the city, not the people. You know, it's the fact that the city exists and is the way it is, that's the problem. And it's just, I don't think it works. So I don't really love that whole plot line. And Jan, for me, becomes very Philip-like. You know, he's just like, like they're almost like whining about how they don't like the way things are, and they try and act against him when they sort of fail. They just have a tantrum and distort. And for that, I have to drop Jan down. Like, conceptually, I like it. I like what they were trying to do. I really like their design, both before and after distortion, but their personality I don't like. Moire is one that you barely really get to know, but I love her design. I love her design. I love how sort of casual she is. She's just sort of there because a piece of paper told her to be, and now she's just like the guardian of the machine under the city. And there really isn't much to her, but I like what there is. She's just kind of cool. Hana association with Marine, Harold, and Olivier. More so Marine and Harold. Wasn't there another one as well? Or was Harold the other one? I don't really remember. They were quite late in the game. I was getting a little bit of character fatigue by that point. They don't really do anything for me. And the character listing's slowly disappearing off the bottom of the screen. But yeah, they don't really do anything for me. Olivier is better because he actually has more personality, has more stuff going on, he's more reason to be there, and it seems almost like the Hana Association is only there by obligation. Like, the plot needed to show that you've sort of reached the top of the chain, and also Olivier is there, and that's sort of how I feel about Hana Association. As we're almost entirely in important characters now, I guess I'll do the last sort of unimportant ones. Pierre's Bistro with Pierre and Jacques. I am going to sound crazy. I really like them because despite being cannibals and running a restaurant for cannibals, they have such a fun outlook. Like, they are friends, and they are revealed at sort of the same tier that, like, Lulu is with Streetlight, but the Lulu stands out a lot more because she's obviously friends with someone. You know, she is actually, like, upset when they die, which I don't think was really the case. I think they have some line for it, but they don't have the same visceral reaction that Lulu did. Ironic, really, considering what they do. But the point is that they are clearly friends, colleagues and friends who just, like, joke about and have fun while they're eating people. So Jacques, I'm going to put as a positive there. He's a hardcover. Pierre, I am going to sound so insane. Pierre, I love her. She's so fun. She's just like, there are so many little things where she's clear that she is having the time of her life doing what she does. And that is so rare in this game. Like, you do get some who are enjoying it, but they're clearly insane, or she seems quite grounded, but also she's just enjoying things. And the best examples for this are like one of her card art, gore warning, one of her card art where she's like holding a knife up to her mouth and it's just got a smile on it. Or the other one, which is probably my favourite, is where she's signing the invitation and she's like got the pen in her hand and the pen cap in her mouth. And it's just such a casual little thing that didn't need to be there for the art to work. But it just shows so much about her personality, and I find her strangely adorable. Why is it that I've got the most monstrous characters up here? What is that saying about me? On the topic of cannibals, Greta, the shark who likes to eat people, she is also kind of one note for me, because she doesn't really do much. Her and Bremen, I'm just going to knock out very quickly. I'm going to put her down in remnants. Bremen, likewise. Because I don't hate them, but there's just not enough about them. They were the only two that were only really introduced in person at the very end, and by that point, they're unrecognisable as anything else, more or less. And yeah, there's just really nothing there. Bremen is interesting in that they're clearly this group of personalities stuck together to the point where they've gone insane, whereas Greta, I don't know, she just wants to eat people. Yay, eating people fun. That's all she is. The last sort of group before we go into a lot of important individual characters is R Corp. We have Rudolph, Maxim, Mio, and Nikolai. Rudolph and Maxim, completely uninterested in. Like they're just sort of, it feels like they're just there so that Mio is less on her own. Nikolai is more interesting. To be honest, Nikolai's only there because I find her key page phenomenally useful. But personality-wise, I don't really remember. The focus of R Corp for me is Mio. She's really interesting. She mentally scars me with the whole cloning and cannibalism thing. That genuinely one of the most disturbing things for me is that, which you really wouldn't be able to tell from the characters in my top. But Mio is one of my favourite characters in the franchise, and she was one of the ones that after I got the good ending, I just randomly go, holy crap, that means Mio's alive! So, you know, that shows that I really like her. So, all that's left are the Librarians and a smattering of major antagonists. So, Purple Tear. Oh, I think she could have been more interesting, but they didn't really explore it. Like, so much about her is teased. About, like, oh, she can hop dimensions. She clearly has some connection with Roland, and I thought that she was Roland's mother for the longest time, because, like, she referred to him as my boy. They look similar, with the black hair. The age gap looks about right, but apparently she just, like, trained him, helped him with the plan and stuff. And also helped Argyle with the plan. Sorry, Argalia with the plan. I call him Argyle, I apologise. I don't know, I feel like there is interesting stuff there, so I'm going to put her in hardcover. But I feel we don't get to explore it enough. So she could have been higher, but there was just not enough going on. Yesterday's Promise, Skeletal Boy, Mr. Malice, Pluto, that was his name. Visually, pretty cool, especially after the distortion, but I don't like him. I feel he's too much of a lackey to really have his own presence, and his battle mechanics were some of the most frustrating in the entire game. Eileen, I also really didn't like her battle mechanics, and it took me a while to notice she is distorted, because she has a veil on and I didn't notice that she didn't have her hair anymore. So, for that, like, that sort of puts her lower. The thing is, I had a theory, and like I haven't talked about this on the channel or anything, but I had a theory that her and Argyle were a couple, at least functionally, like as in they were intimate, but she was a lot more into it than he was. But you know, it's completely unfounded. It's just a vibe I got from them, and I find her interesting in that she is clearly this cult leader who has just become infatuated with Argalia, and because of that is following. Like, apparently she has some beef with Roland as well, but I don't think that came across in the game at all. I don't know if that's that's true. That's just something I've been told. I guess I'm neutral. I think she has some interesting concepts, and the fact that she had like an established cult to the point where people wanted to assassinate her shows that she has been very active in this world, but I guess she just sort of just becomes another person in the ensemble. And the head, we have Xena, Baral, and Luda. They're the only completely unwinnable fight in the entire game, and although the head is interesting, it's cool to see an arbiter, and finally got Binna to step up and be herself. I'm just sort of neutral on them. Something about her design rubs me the wrong way. I do like how it's slightly different from Binna's, implying that there have been changes in the years since she left. Baral is more interesting because his design is really quite different and cool, but he was an absolute dick to fight. And Luda just did nothing. She was just sort of there and then wasn't involved in the fight, and that was it. So we come down to our final lines, the most important characters in the game, almost undeniably. So let's start with some of the librarians. Yesod. Yesod is a boring character. He is quite sort of blunt and dispassionate in a lot of ways, and he's just really quite tiresome to deal with, so I'm going to stick him down in recycling, and I'm not even sorry. Malkuth, however, is a character I really like. She's positive and friendly, and apart from giving absolutely terrible advice to Angela, is rather a good character, and she helps Roland, I think. I mean, not that it really seemed to help much in the end, but she is way, way up there for me. And Netzach is another character that I just really don't see the appeal of. He's just nothing. He's just like, I found him very useful in the battles, but personality-wise, he's just sort of drunk and tired, and it's just... So yeah, sticking him down in recycling as well. Sorry, but not sorry. In the middle there, Tiff, Gabora, and Chesed. Tifereth is a character who I really wasn't particularly keen on in Lobotomy Corporation, but really came into her own in this one. And I don't know if it's because like aging her up gave her more of a semblance of maturity, that it was just sort of hard to believe in her childlike appearance in the first one, or whether she actually matured, or I don't know, she just seemed a lot more with it and a lot more respectable in this one. And the fact that she was this still relatively tiny child, almost the moment she meets Roland, punches him in the face, which is just fun. So she's I don't know if she deserves to be up in limited, probably in hardcover, but like the top end of hardcover. Chesed, the coffee man who never stopped talking about coffee because coffee is amazing, and who doesn't love coffee, and don't you want to hear me talk for half an hour about coffee? Dear God, no. God, if he didn't talk about coffee so much, he'd be in Remnants. I hated the coffee talk. Like, Binna talked about tea a lot, but God, it just felt like the coffee talk went on forever. And I'm not biased because I'm British, because I don't like tea either. Speaking of tea, let's talk about Binna. The thing with Binna is that I was waiting the entire game for her to not be degraded, and then she does it in the final battle, which is unwinnable, and then goes back to being degraded again. And that was incredibly frustrating, so I've installed a mod that allows you to use the undegraded version of it in other battles, because come on now. But I find it fascinating that she's the last character to really get like a revelation in the game, considering she's basically been on the sidelines for most of it. But she is a fascinating character, and it's made me really wonder her motivations, that she didn't want to go back to the head. She could have, but she chose not to. And I think it's because she saw opportunity in a way that's just unexplored yet in the world of Project Moon. So I'm putting her way up here in Limited because I think she is a fascinating character. Her perspectives on stuff were always very interesting, and I really sort of hope we see more of her. Before I go on, I should probably cover Argyle. I'd sort of forgotten I hadn't done him. In a lot of ways, he's the main villain of the game, although we're going to come back to that in a sec, because there are at least 2 other competitors for that role. And he is driven almost entirely by a love for his sister, which seems really weird at best. And I do not want to get into a conversation about how weird it was. That is a conversation that I don't want to get into in the comments of this video. But the point is, he was fine with letting somebody reanimate her corpse as an inside-out puppet. And it's like, yeah, at this point, the question is, what the hell are your motivations? He was a fun character, so he definitely doesn't belong lower than neutral, but I think he has to go into neutral. I think that his good stuff balances out by his bad stuff, and like, I'm not even talking about, he's a horrible person, but he had such a fun attitude while doing it that it makes it harder to hate him for it. Hokma is the next one, and I am a little torn on him as well, because he was there very much as a father figure, and I talked about this a lot during my playthrough. He served basically as the adoptive father of Angela, treating like Ayin as her sort of biological father, Carmen as almost her biological mother, and Hokma as the father who came in to actually try and raise her, but by that point she was jaded against him, I think. And there's a moment late on in the game where they're having a conversation, Hokma and Angela, and it really feels like two immortals who've been like estranged for a very long time, just sitting down and ending their fight just to have a chat. And it's one of my favourite moments from the entire game. And he has really interesting... He has really interesting perspectives on stuff, but I feel he didn't do enough. I feel he could have done more, so I'm going to put him up in hardcover. If he had done a bit more, he could have got into limited. But I feel he did let Angela down by not intervening more towards the end of the game. Gibora, the Red Mist. And if anyone starts commenting, is that the Red Mist? I'm going to be deleting the comments because that meme is so tiring. But yes, she's really cool. It is undeniable that she is really cool. One of the most famous fixes in the world of the Project Moon. Stellar design, especially the Red Mist, like black coat and stuff. I'm not keen on her, like, what's called a pantsuit from her library outfit, but the black coat and stuff, and also especially when you can give her the bunny ears, is just, so good. But she's really fun to play. She's got a lot of interesting stuff around her. The fact that they use her mystique to draw people in and such is just really cool. And she's way up there. I'm just short of putting her in Object Art, frankly. And now the thing has got so big I cannot see the others, so I'm going to have to scroll down a little. So yes, we have these 5 left. So I guess I've better do Hod next, just because she's sort of the odd one out among all of these. Hod is my favourite librarian. She is adorable. I gave her a Cockney accent, which was fun. I had a little heart attack when it was heavily implied that she either had partaken in cannibalism or was at the very least open to it, and it's still sort of implied that she is, and that the only reason she doesn't do it is because she can't separate the fact in her head that they were people. It's not, she doesn't disapprove on a conceptual level, she disapproves on a moral level, and it's just like, that's a little bit too close to cannibalism for my liking, Hod, and I really wish you hadn't said that, but that is the world in which we live, apparently, a world where Hod is conceptually okay with cannibalism. And yes, it's such a weird thing to focus on, but it just affects me so much. Cannibalism is one of those triggers, doesn't really matter. Anyway, point is, Hod is fantastic. She's adorable. Michelle from Lobotomy Corporation is absolutely adorable and one of the most tragic characters in that, probably topped only by Angela. But yes, Hod is one of my favourite characters in the entirety of Project Moon, and definitely deserves to be in Object Art. And now I guess the big 4, so I'll do the least big of the 4 just because she doesn't technically appear in the game, Angelica. And I added her to this because I felt she has enough of an impact and we learn enough about her for me to put her in the tier list. And on second thoughts, I'm not sure we do. Like, we see her entirely from, like, Roland's perspective. I don't know. I think she is as much a cause of Roland's mindset. And, like, I was talking to Skier about this at length, because Angelica is a Skier that character is very fond of, a character that Skier is very fond of. And they were saying Angelica is the one who gave Roland the that is that and this is this phrase, and that he just misused it. And for her, it's sort of, so you just got to get on with stuff. And he used it as an excuse to do whatever the hell he wanted, more or less, with sort of no thought of consequence. I guess I'm going to put her in hardcover because she was a positive influence in the world, I'd say. She tried to I think she tried to help people without putting too much weight on herself. She found love, she found happiness, she helped someone open up. She was ready to start a family in this world, and it is a massive shame to the world of Project Moon that she died, and that her child was never born, and I have theories about that which I'm not going to go into, but yeah, she, I think, is an interesting character. So we come to the big three. Oh, I guess Carmen first. Carmen is another contender for the main villain of the game. She is, I think, a much bigger contender, frankly, than Argyle is, because although he is the most active, obvious antagonist, she was behind everything. She spoke to everybody who distorted, she whispered in their ear, she made them in part go mad. She enabled these powers that they used to do immense destruction. And all the while, I don't know why she did it. And there's like a bit in the ending where Angela is talking to Carmen, and Angela is just like, I'm going to do everything I can to stop you. And I don't understand why any of that was happening. And maybe someone is going to explain it in the comments, and if you do, try to be nice and try to put it as concisely as possible. But, like, Carmen, I consider Carmen the villain of the franchise in a lot of ways, because it was her neglect, her not neglect of Ayn, but her abandoning of Ayn. She started an impossibly hard project, found it very, very hard, and gave up. And in doing so abandoned all the people who followed her to that point, including someone who was willing to give everything he had, Ayn, to try and make her dream come true, and she didn't have the same motivation that he did. And that is why Angela was made, and because Ayn was a bad person as well, that's why Angela came out the way she did. Not came out as in was made the way she was, but turned out the way she did after all of the trauma. But I trace so much of it back to Carmen, who was trying to do a good thing, but the fact that she abandoned it and abandoned everybody, yeah, I really hate her for that. So I would put her down in recycling, because I really do sort of hate her as a character, but I find her so fascinating that I find it hard to put her lower than Remnants. I can't put her down there. I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm going to put her in Remnants. And now, Angela and Roland, the last two characters. I'll do Roland first. Roland was always a weird character. He seemed to just be this random person who just randomly got injected into the middle of this world-changing plot. And he just seemed like a complete, and I keep saying it, random guy. He's just a rando who just popped in. And we later find out that's not the case. But for the vast majority of the game, he's just sort of there doing stuff. Like, there are hints that there's more going on, or hints that there's some sort of trauma, and, you know, it's revealed he lost his wife and his child in this stuff that Angela caused, and it's all very sympathetic. And he becomes Angela's first and only real friend, who wasn't just an employee or someone who's spent centuries hating her, or, you know, someone that she has centuries or millions of years of bad memories over from the repeats and so on. So he was a really, really important character to Angela. And then he betrayed her. And that betrayal changed my perspective of him irreversibly, pretty much. Like, I understand why he did it. I understand his motivations for doing it. And I disagree with them. Because there was the one line that does it in particular, and I have talked about this on the stream when it happened. The one line in particular was like, oh, if you had taken a different choice, Angela, maybe I wouldn't have had to do this. And it's like, that would work if you had not been in a position to try and change her mind. He was the person who was the most likely in the entire world to change her mind about something, and he did not try. He did not try, and then he blamed her for not changing her mind. And if you don't try and change somebody's mind, don't get that pissed off when they don't change their mind. You know, it's on him. And when she was like, not entirely on him, but it's partially on him, when she was like, oh, I'm going to release monsters into the city, we'll see what happens, and he was just, moving on. And no, that was your chance. That was your time to say, maybe don't do that. And, like, I reckon it could have been done in such a way that, like, he was almost reluctant to suggest it, and they could have done it in such a way that it's implied he's hesitant to try and dissuade her because he's afraid of losing his limbs, because he doesn't want to talk back to the boss, or anything like this. But instead, it's just conspicuous that he doesn't. And it was conspicuous at the time, but when he calls back to it, like, oh, you could have taken another choice, that's when it goes from conspicuous to, if not a plot hole, then a character hole. And with the way he betrayed her, I sort of hate Roland. And, yeah, I sort of have to put him in his own tier right at the very bottom of this. Because, oh, God, yeah, he really, really ticked me off. And I'm sorry, but he's my least favourite character in Project Moon at this point. Like, considering what these ones did, or not so much Hod, but, you know, these two in particular, what they've done, and he's down there, that, I think, tells you my thoughts on him. But the last character, Angela, she is the protagonist of this game. And going from, like, an important side character in Lobotomy Corporation, who was, you know, pitched as a side character. She wasn't actually, but she was pitched as it. And then in this one as the protagonist, who you can see is going down a dark path and consistently gets either bad advice or no advice from the people she goes to for advice. Like, and I think it was Malkuth who was like, oh, you can only rely on yourself. And all of these other, like, after the realizations and the advice they gave her was not what she needed. And it didn't help her. And I don't know that it made things worse, but she was just on her own floundering for help. And Roland didn't, I'm going back to bashing Roland, and he didn't help her. Like, there were a few moments when he did, but on the big moments, when it was really reaching the end, he didn't. And that's why she was left in this state where she was willing to destroy the city until the betrayal happened. And the betrayal is what convinced her this is a cycle. This is a chain of neglect is the term I used, and I did a video talking about this early on in my playthrough, linked in the description. But like this chain of neglect from Carmen to Ayn to Angela, and then from Angela to her librarians and the city. And she recognized this when she saw Roland betray her. And that is what, in the good ending, and I've read through the other endings and I hate them, so I'm just going to ignore those and pretend, and I'm fairly sure that the good ending is the canon ending, that in that ending that she came to terms with this and realized, no, I need to change things. And it produced one of my favourite endings, and this is why I say Library of Ruina is one of my favourite games ever, because the ending was, apart from the Roland betrayal, perfect. Because you have her outside the city looking in as an immortal, godlike character saying, I'm gonna fix this. Because this is what I hate, and I'm just waxing lyrical about the genre now, what I hate about nihilistic stories and nihilistic settings is that they often end nihilistically. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but there's another prominent franchise that does this, and the ending, and to be honest, this is the case with a lot of franchises that go the nihilistic route, the ending is so not good that it's like, what was the point? Whereas this, the ending is positive. In the good ending, she resolves to do something about it, and she is one of the only entities in the world of Project Moon who is capable of doing so. And for this, for the fact that we saw her entire story from creation, I almost said conception, from creation to like her final goal at the point that we know Angela better than any other character in this franchise. And frankly, Angela deserves a tier of her own at the top, because she is the most fascinating, one of the best written, one of the most fleshed out, and just one of the best characters from anything that I have read, played, experienced. She's great. So that's my conclusion. that is my full tier list, and this video is probably considerably longer than I expected it to be, but this game has affected me immensely. And yeah, if it takes this long to talk about why, I am fine with that. And if you watch through all of this, then you're probably a big fan of Project Moon, and I hope you enjoyed my thoughts as well. I dare say, particularly with some of the lower end picks, I have peed off a lot of people, so if there are choices I've made that you really disagree with, by all means let me know in the comments, but be respectful. You know, something I forgot to say at the beginning is these are my personal opinions, so please don't tell me I'm wrong. I'm actually going to add that in at the beginning, so I'm recording that now. Remember, these are my personal opinions, so please don't tell me I'm wrong. So if you disagree, that's fine. People are allowed completely different opinions, and I may have put your favourite character in the very bottom tier, or close to it. And likewise, you may think that I'm insane for putting, like, Elena and Pierre in the Object d'Art up with Hod and Lesty, of all characters. But, you know, each person's allowed their own opinions, so I would love to hear other people's opinions in the comments. Again, be nice. So, thank you very much for watching. I've done a couple of videos on Limbus Company, and when I played considerably more Limbus Company, I am probably going to want to do one of these for that as well, because the world of Project Moon is fascinating with its characters. There is such a spectrum of personality and motivations and designs and everything in this game and this world, and it is so cool. So thank you very much for watching. Remember, you can check out my live stream playthroughs of Lobotomy Corporation and Library of Ruina and my Limbus First Impressions in the description. Go check those out, and I will catch you later.